Who are you?
Looks scary, but your brain didn't even flinch. Why? That wasn't fear. That was a mask pretending to be fear. Somewhere along the line, horror got hijacked. And what replaced it isn't just bad, it's soulless. Not by chance. Not even by laziness. This was deliberate. And once you see how deep it goes, you'll never watch horror the same again. The scariest horror never jumped at you, it exposed you. Like it knew the one thing you'd never confess. Not to your friends, not even to yourself. Not fear, but that decision you still replay at 3 a.m. The one you swore you buried for good. Real horror didn't scream. It watched. It waited. Until it slipped into your thoughts so quietly, you didn't even notice it was there. And when it finally showed itself, it didn't wear claws. It wore your mother's voice, your child's, saying the thing you'd never admit you wanted to say.
Just be normal. There is no mother.
This wasn't horror for fun. This was horror that remembered who you were. And we traded it for something louder and so much emptier. We buried films like Hereditary and called it evolution. But what actually changed was the mask horror started wearing. Because horror didn't get lazy, it got smart somewhere along the way. It stopped whispering your name and started shouting for your attention. The shift didn't just dull the blade, it rewired the entire genre. You're not being stalked anymore. You're being entertained. Because the moment horror tried to please you, it stopped trying to possess you. Studios didn't miss the mark. They found a shortcut. Fear could be studied, tested, measured, then packaged and sold like dopamine. What used to feel personal was now just product. Not by accident, not by failure, by design. Modern horror didn't just lose its soul, it sold it. Because somewhere along the way, studios found something more profitable than fear, attention. And once they did, they stopped trying to scare you. They started trying to go viral. Every scream is choreographed for TikTok. Every twist is engineered to trend. And suddenly, horror wasn't about what haunted you after the credits. It was about what looked best in the trailer. Because now, the trailer is the movie, and everything else? Just filler dressed in shadows. Fear doesn't sell anymore. Aesthetic dread does. So silence, the most sacred weapon in horror, was replaced with exposition. Lore replaced atmosphere. And demons? They don't stalk anymore. They monologue.
Feels so good to ruin such innocent flesh.
No, that's not terror. That's tech support. Horror used to hide in the quiet. Now it explains itself. But here's the part no one wants to say out loud. We didn't just let it happen. We rewarded it. We traded nightmares for narratives, style for soul. And the worst part? We still call it horror, even though the corpse has been cold for years. You just didn't notice the funeral. There's one moment modern horror crossed a line it could never come back from. And most people didn't even notice it happen. It wasn't when the screams got weaker. It wasn't when the box office dropped. It was when horror got scared of silence. One tiny shift, so quiet you could miss it, tore out the part of horror that stayed with you after the credits. The scariest scenes used to live in the gaps. The sound upstairs, the shape in the hallway. That one shot you couldn't explain and couldn't forget. But now, horror doesn't trust you to feel. It tells you exactly when to flinch. Why you should flinch. What the monster wants. How to beat it.
Think it. Don't say it. Don't think it. Don't say it. Don't think
Suddenly, there's always a tragic backstory.
Cursed to roam the earth, searching for children to take their place. Children are told to behave. Listen to their elders. Or La Llorona will come.
Great. Now I'm solving puzzles instead of feeling dread. You know what made Hereditary horrifying? There were no puzzles, no rules to exploit. The evil didn't care how clever you were. It swallowed you whole. Studios today, they're terrified of confusion. They map every emotion. They explain every shadow, but trauma doesn't wait for Act 3. And death doesn't play fair. That was the moment horror's soul slipped away. the day it stopped leaving us alone with the silence and started filling it with answers. But those answers, they don't come from writers anymore. They come from something far more chilling. The scariest thing in modern horror isn't a monster. It's the machine, quietly deciding what you're allowed to fear. Horror didn't just die. It got replaced by something colder, smarter, far more dangerous. Because fear doesn't come from nightmares anymore. It comes from a spreadsheet. Today's horror films don't start with a scream. They start with a trend line. Before a single page is written, the algorithm has already chosen the shape of your terror. Producers scroll TikTok, Reddit, YouTube, hunting for spikes. Folk horror is trending. Possession is back with Gen Z. And just like that, the film isn't written. It's assembled. The monster must be memeable. The trailer must hit in 12 seconds. The plot? One sentence max. Not because it's terrifying, because it's shareable. It's not built to disturb you, it's built to hit Thursday's trends and clip well by Friday morning. This isn't horror storytelling. This is fear manufacturing. And that's the true villain of modern horror. Not the ghost, not the curse, but the quiet machinery, replacing human nightmares with market-tested ones. But here's the part nobody wants to admit. The algorithm doesn't just choose what stories get told. It decides exactly how you feel in every scene. You ever sense it? That weird moment when you know how the movie ends before the first scream. That's not déjà vu. That's design. Beat for beat. Scene for scene. Every jump scare pre-installed, like an app on your phone. Act 1. The setup. A TikTok-friendly scare to catch the scroll. A protagonist who looks terrified, but feels like a thumbnail. Act 2. The lore dump. The flashback. The dream sequence. The tragic backstory they beg you to cry at. Act 3. The ritual. The countdown. The fake death. The fake ending. The twist you spotted 30 minutes ago. The cursed object. The "you have 7 days or you die" curse. The final shot where the monster twitches. You're not watching a movie anymore. You're checking boxes. And that's the ultimate horror. When a story stops haunting you and starts feeling preloaded. But it gets worse. The scariest thing modern horror ever did wasn't a kill scene. It was the moment it stopped trying to disturb you and started trying to comfort you. Because real horror doesn't play fair. It doesn't follow the rules. It shatters them. It doesn't hand you closure. It leaves you stranded in chaos. Nightmares don't come from what you expect. They come from what your brain can't file away. The unsolvable puzzle that keeps replaying in the dark. But today's horror? It's predictable by design. Why? Because if it plays by the rules, you don't have to feel lost. You don't have to feel helpless. You're safe. You get the backstory, the ritual, the explanation, even the escape plan. Every loose end, tied up in a final twist you're meant to understand. And that's not terror. That's a bedtime story for adults pretending they want to be afraid. Horror used to do something that modern movies can't even touch. There was a time horror didn't just scare you. It cut you open and made you feel everything you swore you'd buried. Fear, guilt, grief, regret, not just adrenaline, but wounds. The monster was never the point. It was the mirror. The Babadook wasn't just a demon. It was grief that refused to die quietly. Real horror didn't chase you through hallways. It sat beside you in silence and whispered questions you didn't want answers to. But today, we don't sit with fear. We scroll past it. Modern horror's been redesigned for a culture that can't sit still. Faster cuts, louder jumps, simpler stakes. Not to make you feel more, but to make sure you don't feel anything for too long. We didn't just sanitize fear. We sterilized emotion. Horror isn't dying because it's bad. It's dying because we've forgotten how to feel it. But some horror didn't just refuse to sell out. It evolved into something that wants a piece of you. Not to entertain you, not to comfort you. To carve something out of you you'll never get back. Skinamarink. Speak no evil. When evil lurks, these aren't movies. They're predators. You don't watch them. You survive them, if you're lucky. No catharsis. No clean ending. No distance between you and the thing breathing down your neck. Because these films weren't built to please you. They were built to consume you. They sink their teeth into your mind and rot it from the inside, whispering in the language of grief, of helplessness, of the silence after the scream. They don't hold tension, they hold truth. And maybe that's where the last spark of real horror hides. Not in blood or spectacle, but in something that doesn't want your applause, but your soul. Because horror was never built to entertain you. It was built to undo you. Not a genre, a ritual, a mirror you didn't want to look into, but couldn't turn away from. It didn't hand you a monster so you could run. It whispered the truth. The monster was already inside. It wasn't clean. It wasn't kind. It didn't give you closure. It ripped that away. Because horror's greatest power was never the scream. It was the silence after. That heavy, aching quiet when the credits roll and you realize the story didn't end. It just followed you home. That's what made it holy. Not fear, truth. And maybe modern horror feels empty, not because the movies changed, but because we did. We stopped letting horror confront us, stopped letting it hold the mirror, stopped letting it mean something. And if horror was never meant to numb us, then maybe it was always meant to wake us up.
Sink into the floor.
Wait.
Sink.
We just broke down why modern horror feels so empty. But there's one film that did the opposite. One film that cut deeper than all the rest. And 7 years later, nothing has come close. Click this next video to see why this horror masterpiece is still unmatched.